The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Yeah, we are. I'm back home. Look, I'm back home. So it's been a while. It's been a couple of weeks. I apologize for so few shows. We did a couple from London, so I hope you enjoyed those. But it was a busy trip. So hard to do a lot of shows while traveling. I will say I was at the Ayn Rand Institute conference in Warsaw over the weekend, and wow, it was fantastic. We had I think it was about almost 600 people were there, about 450 students. It was probably the largest objectivist conference ever in Warsaw, which is amazing. It was we had talks all day. People stayed the whole time. The room was packed, engaged, motivated, terrific attendees. A lot of them, this was their first introduction to Ayn Rand. Many of them had read some Ayn Rand, a lot of libertarians, some anarchists, but all being exposed to, I can't remember, 6-8 speakers talking about Ayn Rand's philosophy, a lot of introductory material, for an audience like that. So it was just terrific. Large groups from Poland, from Serbia, from Montenegro, from Bosnia, from Georgia, big group from Georgia. Some Scandinavians were there, some people from France, Germany. 38 different countries were represented. I mean, that's pretty stunning. 38 different countries represented, 600 people. It was a blast. I had a really good time. I got to see a lot of people that I know from my various travels all over the world, all in one place. And so that was terrific. A lot of my, people I've met in Georgia, met in Bosnia, met in Poland. I go to Poland quite often. Czech Republic was well represented there. Slovakia, Slovenia. I mean, it was just, 38 countries. You'd have to. Russia was there, Ukraine, of course. So Portugal, on and on and on you can go. Right, Spain. So really exciting. It's exciting to see energy and passion and interest in Europe. I remember 15 years ago. 12, 13 years ago, going for the first time really to start giving talks in Europe, and it was dead. There was nothing there. Now, Ayn Rand's books are all translated into all these languages, and there are hundreds of people interested, and they come to this event, and I think it could grow a lot bigger. I'm hoping to get this conference up to 1,000 people in the years to come, and hopefully those of you in Europe who were there had a good time, had enjoyed it. Those of you who are listening to the show and who weren't there, you should come. Hopefully next year you'll be able to come. We'll have the conference next year back in Prague, the place where we had it last year. It'll be in first weekend in March of 2021 in Prague. So join us. I'm excited. Excited about the prospects of Europe, excited about what's possible. And look, very few people, we had a few people come from the UK, but the UK is huge. There's a big objectivist community in the UK, and imagine if everybody came, you would get well over 1,000 people. So really excited about the prospects for Europe, and the conference was a blast. So thank you to everybody at the Ayn Rand Institute for putting on such a fantastic show. All right, I've got a lot of, content for today's show. We've got a lot of material to cover. If we don't cover it today, we can cover it tomorrow. Probably do a show tomorrow as well. So, but I don't want to get while it's fresh in my mind. I want to do this review of the movie Parasite. I think it's an important movie. I think it's very reflective of the time. It's stunning. It's a movie that has won all these awards. I mean, it's basically won everything. It won the Cannes Festival Top Movie Award. It won foreign film with all the various awards that are happening in the United States. Parasite won all kind of the foreign film awards, and then in the Oscars, of course, it's the first foreign film, the first non-English film, to win the Oscar for best film, for best director. So truly, from an awards perspective, a stunning achievement. So I had to go see the movie. I had to find out what the deal is, and so I watched it on the plane coming home, and somebody warned me that I should really watch it on a big screen, and they're probably right. The movie has some stunning visuals, and I think the movie's very visual in many respects. It's got a really, really bad theme, but the movie uses visuals to portray the theme, which is really good filmmaking in that respect. It is, I think, generally the movie's well made. I think it's well integrated. It took me a long time to figure out. It took me really chewing on it for 2 days to figure out what the theme was. But the more I thought about the visuals, the more the theme comes into focus, the more you realize what the movie is trying to say. And it's basically trying to say what the director, in this case, is saying it's trying to say. So in this case, an artist's metaphysical value judgments are coming across, and he can explicitly state them. So the theme is more political, but it's definitely the theme is well, it's got a metaphysical aspect, but the theme is real. So do I recommend watching the movie before we get into the review? So a few things. One, the review is going to have spoilers, lots of spoilers, because I can't review the movie without really telling you what the movie is about and what happens in the movie, including the end of the movie. The movie I'm talking about, for those of you joining late, is Parasite. Including the ending of the movie, because I think the ending of the movie kind of encapsulates the theme and the whole sense of life, and the whole perspective of the movie is encapsulated by it. So there are going to be spoilers, so I warn you of that. We're going to go through a little bit of the storyline, and then I want to describe the visuals that I think are most significant in the movie. And again, if you're interested in cinema, I definitely encourage you to watch the movie. It's got elements that are painful, and certainly there is a climatic scene that is extraordinarily violent. It's short, but it's very violent, and very shocking, right? Very shocking. You can kind of sense that it's coming, or something like it is coming. I don't think I quite expected the rush of violence, but of course the theme ultimately necessitates that kind of violent climax. So do I recommend the movie? If you're interested in movies, if you're interested in cinema, then yes, because I think it's a very interestingly made movie. I think the director here is very strong visually. He really has an understanding of space. He uses space really well. He conveys the fundamental theme of the movie through visuals, and people's movement through the scenes. So I think it's very powerful in that sense. The theme is a negative one. It's not a pleasant movie. There's nobody good in the movie. There are no good guys in the movie. So there's nobody positive in the movie. It's typically modern in that sense. It has no heroes. It has no characters you can look up to. It has no positive message. The message is overall absolutely unequivocally negative. It's a very at the end of the day, a very depressing movie, a very negative sense of life, depressing movie. But again, if you like movies, if you like cinema, then it's interesting to watch. It's an interesting how it plays out. It's interesting, again, what the director does with the movie. I've only seen one other movie by this director. I didn't even realize it when I saw it. Only afterwards, when I was looking him up, did I realize. But I saw a movie years ago. A movie came out in 2013 called Snowpiercer, which is a science fiction movie that I saw. And what's interesting is the two movies have very similar themes. That is, clearly this director is motivated by a particular view of the world. And that view of the world comes across in both Snowpiercer, which is a sci-fi movie I can talk about after we talk about this movie. So Snowpiercer and Parasite have very, very, very similar themes to the movies. Okay, so I want to talk about. Let's first talk about. I'll give you a quick summary of the story, right? The story of the movie, and then I want to talk about the particular visual that if you're going to watch the movie, I would focus on. Now, again, I'm going to give you a lot of spoilers, so to the extent that you like to be in suspense in the movie, then you should probably leave the podcast right now, and if you intend to watch the movie and not listen. If you've seen the movie, I think this will be interesting to you, and even if you're going to see the movie, but you don't mind spoilers, that is, it's not that important to you, that you don't know where the movie's heading, then I would encourage you to continue listening to the movie. All right, so here's the story in short. So you've got a poor family, father, mother, son, and daughter. They live in, I guess what's fairly common in Korea, in the slums. They live in a basement-type apartment with a window looking into the street. And windows are very important in this movie. Window looking in the street, but it's like on the top, right? There's a window, so you can look and you can see the feet of people. You can see the people standing up, but the apartment itself is underground, with only this one portion of the window above. Again, very important that the apartment is underground, and that it generally it's underground, and that they're looking up through these windows. Anyway, they're all out of work. See, you've got the son and the daughter they seem like post-college. The son has also been in the army, and they are out of work. And a rich friend of the son, comes to him and says, "Look, I'm tutoring this girl of a rich family in English. You can take my job. I'm going off to study abroad. You can come and take the job. But in order to do that, you have to pretend to be a college student. You have to pretend to be wealthy. You have to pretend to be from a good family, and you have to pretend to have a college degree." So the son, with the help of the daughter, forges all the documents necessary. He goes, does the interview, and gets the job. Then he discovers that the son. So he gets a job at this rich family. Now the rich family lives in a beautiful modern home, right? A beautiful modern home, which we are told in the story was designed by some architect who used to live in it and has left. This beautiful modern home has big windows looking out into this amazing garden, and then out into kind of the meadows and the hills, and just a beautiful view, right? So it's just a gorgeous view, and you can sit in the living room and look out into this spacious, beautiful thing. Again, big window looking out into this amazing garden. In this home lives a wealthy man, CEO of some company, his wife, a son and daughter. The son and daughter are younger. The daughter is in the last grade in high school, not very bright, needs help with her English. The son is a confused kid that they don't know what exactly to do with. And at some point, it becomes evident that they would like to get him some kind of art teacher. So the poor kid suggest, oh, I know an art teacher, and he makes up the story about a girl that he knows who's an art teacher who went to these art academy and goes to these schools and goes here and there and is really, really good. And the wife, the rich wife, says, oh, this is great, let's get her. So they forge her documents, and this is his sister. And he brings the sister into the house as now the teacher for the young son. Anyway, they then managed to get the driver, the rich father has a driver who takes him to work, takes him back. The family has a driver, and they managed to get him fired, and they get their father to replace him. And then they managed to get, by again creating havoc and lying and deceiving through deception, they managed to get the housekeeper in this house, who's been in the house forever, including when it was owned by the architect, and they get her fired, and she is replaced by the mother. Now, in none of the cases, they say, this is my father, this is my mother. There are supposedly 4 different people who don't really know, who have some connection to one another, but don't really know each other. Certainly not all members of one family. So here, the poor family has been very resourceful, has come up with a plan of deception in order to get their jobs. And there are elements of this that are funny, and indeed, the movie at the beginning of it seems like a comedy and seems like it's going to develop as a comedy. It becomes a tragedy very quickly, but it is presented as a comedy drama, comedy tragedy kind of a movie. And the beginning seems like this comedy where these poor people are basically deceiving the rich people, and the rich people are portrayed as kind of naive, kind of childish, kind of silly, kind of empty, and easy to manipulate. Easy to manipulate. So not a very admirable family. Very detached from reality, detached from the real world. So they're all in place. Everything is running smoothly until one day the rich family goes off on a camping trip. And the housekeeper comes back. And the housekeeper comes back and she says, there's something I have to do. Please let me into the house. So they let her in, and they discover that in the house, there is, inside the cellar, there is a secret door that leads down into this shelter. Basically, a shelter built by this rich family, just in case of a nuclear war with North Korea. So there's a shelter underneath the basement, and it's a secret door nobody knows about, the current owners. And in the shelter, the old housekeeper that was kicked out's husband lives in there. And he lives there, and she basically feeds him off of the food from the rich family. And he basically stays there, never goes out. And he's there because he's lost his job. And the whole thing is the poor family lost their jobs. They've worked and they've lost a job. The father has had many jobs over his career but keep losing them. The mother has had many jobs but keeps losing them. So it doesn't present them as people who don't want to work. They clearly want to work. But they have no job. There is no option. And this one guy is stuck in the basement, and they have nothing. They have no property. They have nothing. She works as a housekeeper. She lives in the home, and her husband's in the basement. Right? Really, really, really weird. But basement is important. Really deep shelter, bunker basement. Really, really important. Again, visually. We'll get to that. Anyway, these guys, the housekeeper and husband, discover that the 4 people are actually related, that they're not separate, that they're actually one family. They threaten to tell the family so they can she can get her job back. Mayhem ensues. During that mayhem, basically the housekeeper's killed, and then while all this is happening, the family announces that they're coming back, and so everybody's scrambling. They're locked down in the basement with a dead, the guy and his wife are locked down in the basement with his wife that's now being killed in all this mayhem. The others scatter, they hide. The housekeeper's the only one who's there, and everybody else is hiding. And the family comes in, and they're clueless. They have no clue that these people have been partying in their house. They have no clue that everybody's been there. They have no clue that all this is going on. They're completely clueless as to what's happening, which is a continuation of this idea that these rich people are completely clueless and have no sense at all of what's going on. Anyway, a bunch of stuff happens, and we'll get to what happens in the meantime, but the housekeeper stays. The other kids manage to escape the house. Now, in the meantime, massive rainstorm, a monsoon happens, and the family, the two kids and the father, walk back. They basically walk back from this rich family house to their apartment. And when they get to their apartment is completely flooded with water. Of course, the water flows down and floods their apartment. They landed up going into shelter. Anyway, they're in the shelter. They get a call from the rich woman, and she says, "Oh, I want to put on a party tomorrow, birthday party. I need you all to come." And she calls them all back to the house to set up this party. Okay, so this party's happening, and this is where the climax happens, and the violent climax happens. Anyway, the guy in the basement, pissed off that his wife is dead, upset at this family, sees them out there partying, helping with the party and everything, takes a kitchen knife and goes out and stabs the poor daughter, right? Stabs the poor daughter. Basically, she's bleeding out. She's bleeding out. I guess some of the kids got hit, so they're kind of waving, and the rich father tells the driver, who's the father of the girl dying, that he wants him to drive the kid to the hospital. Forget about the girl. So the rich guy shows complete disregard for anybody else's life, for anything else going on there. His kid just got hurt a little bit, and he needs to rush him to the hospital. At this point, and again, another issue I'll get to in a minute, the poor father takes the knife and stabs the rich guy and kills him. He escapes, lands up hiding from the police in this bunker. They never find him. He stays in the bunker. And the rest of the family, the daughter dies, and the other two, they just, I'll tell you afterwards how it actually ultimately ends. Okay, so that's kind of the outline of the story. Pretty random, pretty crazy, pretty insane, pretty nutty action. So what's the theme of all this? What's the theme? Well, let's go back to a few of the images. One, poor family lives in a basement with this little window that can see out into the street. And their main concern with this window is that there's this drunk guy that always pees on their window, right? Life really, really sucks. They're trying hard. They're trying hard to the point of conceiving of plans to deceive people and finagle them, but they're trying hard. They've been fired from every job they can conceive of, not because they were bad at the job, but because that's the nature of the world. Businesses go out of business, jobs get replaced, and people lose their jobs, and they're just down on their luck. So they live in this basement apartment. The other family, the other poor family we know of, live in a bunker. The guy basically lives in a bunker under a rich people's home. And the rich people live in a house basically on top of a hill that has beautiful windows in which you can see the world, and just gorgeous spread. And they are sheltered from the rain, and they are sheltered from everything. Their house never floods. Their house is just beautiful, right? And it really is a beautiful house. It's a modernly designed house. They built the house. It's basically a set house, right? They built a house for the movie, for the purpose of the movie. So in that sense, every angle, every layout, every piece of furniture is thought out. And this is one of the positive things about the movie. It's all really thought out. It's all figured out how it all lays out. So upstairs is where the rich people live. Downstairs is where the poor people live. And there's clearly an upstairs, downstairs aspect. Downstairs, upstairs, there's a huge theme in this movie. We're constantly going down the stairs to the cellar and up the stairs, and down the stairs to the basement apartment and up the stairs to the nice house. The house itself has stairs, but less important. But it's the rich people, poor people. Poor people live down, rich people live up, and the camera often spans up and down. Maybe the two illustrative scenes of this. So when the rich people come back after they've gone camping, and everybody is hiding. Well, they're hiding under a table. Under. The rich people are above them on the sofa. You'd think they'd see them, but again, the rich people are clueless and portrayed as completely clueless. So they're under the sofa. They're on the sofa and under, and they actually have, almost sex, I guess. They make out on the sofa, the rich couple. The kid is outside in a beautiful modern tent while it's raining, and the poor people are under the table. The poor people are always under, the rich people are almost over. Then the scene where they walk in the rain from the rich house to their basement apartment, which they find flooded, is a beautifully filmed scene. It's pouring rain, and they go down a hill, downstairs, down a road, downstairs, down a road, downstairs, down, 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 down. It's clear that you've got the class hierarchy, class positioning is central to this movie. That is the whole point of the movie, is a illustration, visual and in the story, of the relationships between classes, the relationship between the rich and the poor. It is striking how many times you see that, up, down, rich up, the poor are down. The rich are safe, the rich are warm, the rich are comfortable, the poor are in the muck. Not only do they return to their basement apartment, is it flooded, but there's sewage spewing out everywhere. Nothing they can do about it. Nothing will stop it. They live in filth. They live with people urinating on their windows. They live underground. All the poor people in the movie live underground. They're forgotten. They're unknown. Nobody cares about them. Now, the movie doesn't romanticize poverty. The poor family are not good guys. They're clearly deceiving. They're clearly, and in one case, because they get the driver fired, and they get the maid fired, the housekeeper fired, they're clearly hurting other people in the same economic class that they are. So it's not that they are good guys. It's that they have no choice. Class is beyond choice. Class is what it is. The rich family is rich. We don't know how they got rich. We don't see the father working particularly hard. There's one scene where he's at the work. It's not clear. He's sitting there making, with a bunch of people surrounding him, kind of, I guess, making decisions. But there's nothing substantive about showing his work or showing the kind of decision making he's making. The poor families are poor. And nothing they do changes the fact that they're poor. They get the jobs, they've got money, but they screw it up, they mess it up, they're discovered. Bad stuff happens, and back to poverty they go. So, it's inevitable. The poor, the rich are rich. And there's a certain appeal to a theme like this in Korea, because Korean society was very, very, what's the term? Feudal. Really well into the 20th century. Clear classes, you're born into classes, you're born into a particular class. It's almost a caste system, not quite. But if you watched Mr. Sunshine, which I highly, highly, highly recommended, and you should have watched, you could see the class structure of Korean society well into the 20th century. And it's reflected now in the 21st century in Parasite. At least that is the understanding that the movie conveys about the classes. The rich are rich because they just are. The poor are poor because they just are. And nothing the poor do has any chance of bringing them out of poverty. They are doomed to that. And indeed, the primary conflict that happens is the conflict between the two poor families, the housekeeper who comes back and her husband in the basement, and this new, that is the pie, as the movie sees it, the pie is so limited that the poor families are fighting over a very limited pie. They're fighting over the little crumbs that the rich leave them. The two poor families have to struggle to survive at each other's expense. They cannot both exist off of the little crumbs that the rich family sends their way. So not only are the poor poor, but they're all fighting against each other and eating each other up and damaging each other's chances of success. Yeah, I mean, somebody in the chat mentions one scene in the movie where the family, before they get these jobs with the rich people, they're trying to fold pizza boxes to make a living. So the pizza company is willing to give them a pizza box to fold. So they're folding these pizza boxes, the whole family sitting, they're folding pizza boxes, and they get 25% of them wrong. They damage them. So they can't even do that properly. So these are not, again, the poor are not romanticized here. It's life sucks. And the thing is that life sucks for the rich as well. The rich are portrayed as naive, easily exploited, easily taken advantage of. The rich are portrayed as suffering, as ultimately suffering from the actions of the poor and from their own actions. So the father, the rich father, is killed in the end. And that's important because I think the theme of it, the theme of the movie is that inequality or class structure, right, the vast differences between the classes, only results in horror for both the poor and the rich. So class inequality results in horror for both rich and poor. But class is also inevitable according to the movie. Class is inevitable according to the movie. So I think the movie is well made. It's well acted. The particular issues are well dramatized. The sense of the movie gives of the inevitability of class, the inevitability of disaster, the inevitability of class. Well, of the horror, of murder, of bloodshed. It's all inevitable. There's nothing to do about it. The movie offers no alternatives, no options, no outs. Indeed, at the end of the movie, the son, the poor son, who's schemed this whole idea up and is constantly a schemer, he writes to his father, who's stuck in the bunker underneath the house. He writes to the father, he writes this letter saying, one day I'm going to go down, I've got a plan, I'm going to go study, I'm going to go work hard, I'm going to make a lot of money, I'm going to buy the house that all this happened in, this rich house, and I'm going to free you from the basement. I'm going to free you from the bunker. And there's this dreamlike scene where he comes into the house and the father comes out of the bunker and they hug. And then the camera cuts away from that and brings it back into the basement apartment where the kid is writing. And it's obvious. That's never going to happen. That's just a dream. That's just another one of this kid's fantasies. At some point, the father, the poor father, tells the kid, don't plan. There's no point in planning. Everything sucks. Everything fails. Whether you plan or you don't plan, failure is inevitable. The unexpected always happens. Good stuff cannot happen to us. So the movie is saying there is no nobility in the world. Doesn't matter if you're poor or you're rich. If you're poor, you're rich, in a sense. You're born into that. There's nothing really you can do about that. There's no sense of mobility in this movie. The rich are rich, the poor are poor. They stay that way. And to the extent that those classes exist, Everybody is going to suffer. So yes, it's very deterministic in the end. Choices don't matter. So if you could say inequality or class differences inevitably, deterministically, lead to horror for both the rich and the poor, for everybody involved, for people in every class. So there you have it. That is my review of the movie. It is a terrible theme. It is a depressing movie. It is a depressing idea. It's got nothing to recommend it, but it's very indicative again of a culture, particularly of Hollywood, where inequality is, they obsess about it. The left obsesses about inequality. This movie reinforces all of their most basic primary ideas and primary beliefs. Their idea in a kind of determinism, their ideas of lack of social mobility, their idea that you're born into a particular class and that is inevitable, and their idea of the inevitability of tragedy. The inevitability of tragedy. So depressing, horrible as social commentary, really, really bad, but very well made. And again, if you see the movie, pay particularly attention to this idea of upstairs, downstairs, this idea of above and below, the superiority of some to others, and that positioning that is very visual. So this is a good movie for those of you who are studying cinema, for those of you who want to see how to use visuals, in order to tell a story. All right. Look, I haven't covered every aspect of the movie. I haven't covered everything in the movie, and everything else. There's no point, I don't think, in going that much in depth. I will say this: the other movie this director has made that I saw is called Snowpiercer, which was made in 2013. It is a dystopian science fiction movie based on, I guess, a French graphic novel. And it's explicitly a class warfare movie. It is about, the basic story is, I won't give you the whole story, but it's very visual arresting. Again, this director has very strong visuals, very interesting visuals. Here, everything happens on a train. All of humanity is basically on a train. And the classes are organized in different compartments on the train. So the working class, the middle class, the upper class. And the whole story is about the rebellion of the working class. And there's a working class rebellion. They want freedom. They want, it's very authoritarian the way the world is run on this train. This train runs forever. It's the only life on planet Earth is on this train, I guess, because the rest of the Earth froze over because of climate change or something. And anyway, there's the uprising, and the end of the movie, what you realize is the uprising was all orchestrated by the upper classes in order to divert the lower classes' attention. So it's all basically the inevitability of classes, the inevitability of the victory of of the upper class, and the ability to manipulate every aspect of the lower classes. And it's this futility of class warfare, because what can you do? The rich always win. And there's a sense in which it's a very similar theme to to this movie. So I thought it was really interesting. I didn't realize that it was the same director, but both movies are heavily, heavily Marxist in that sense. Class-driven, class-oriented. Everything is about classes and the conflict between classes. And that's where we are in the modern times, and those are the movies that win awards. And it's sad, I guess, that it is a movie that ultimately is viewed as the best movie of the year. And partially it's viewed as the best movie of the year is because there are no good movies with good themes. There are no good movies with good themes. The only good movies have bad themes. And the better themes usually are rotten movies. All right. Let's see. I've got a few super chat questions here, and then we'll do Michael Milken. Interpreted it to say in part that the poor and impoverished are inherently noble and good, but are corrupted by the economic position in society. No, I don't think that's in the movie. I don't think there is anything about them being inherently noble and good. I didn't see that. I think he has a pretty low view of humanity. Somebody says, "What's a world-themed film?" Recently, I really can't think of one. What was good recently? I mean, a movie I recommended not that long ago called, which I won't give you the plot of because I'd like you guys to see it, This Land Is Mine, which is an old movie from the 1940s. The theme of This Land Is Mine is something around the nature of heroism. That is, heroism in spirit. The nature of heroism in spirit. So not just heroism in action, but the focus is on really heroism in spirit. So that would be a good themed movie and a great movie to boot. I suspect that a lot of other movies, I haven't seen Ford versus Ferrari, I will, and I'll give you a review of that, but some people say Ford versus Ferrari has a good theme and is well made. We'll find out. I'll see it. So there are a lot of good movies with good themes. Off the cuff, it's hard to do. I think Last of the Mohicans had a good theme, the one made in the 1980s. I think there are a lot of good movies with good themes, but it's rarer and rarer, I think, these days. Koreans blame capitalism for inequality in South Korea, but the capitalists are backed by government. How do people fail to see how the mixed economy works? I think people don't see how the mixed economy works because nobody really helps them see it. People need guidance. This is the role of the intellectuals. And the intellectuals don't convey that there's capitalism, there's socialism, and there's a mixed economy. And that what Korea is a mixed economy with capitalist enemies and massive cronyism. What they tell people, and what is constantly repeated, is that cronyism is capitalism. And unfortunately, some of the defenders of capitalism make the mistake of calling it crony capitalism, thereby better even solidifying that approach. So most people don't understand, don't get the difference because it's constantly hammered, they're constantly repeated, and they don't think properly about these issues. They don't separate, they don't conceptualize what capitalism was, what free markets are, and they don't conceptualize what socialism, and they don't think about what their government really is. So I think This Land Is Mine is on YouTube. I'm not sure if it's on Hulu or any other thing. It's one of my top 5 favorite movies. I think it's an amazing movie from every aspect. And the acting is some of the best I've seen in any movie. And the theme is fantastic. So it's one of my favorites. So it's not just Koreans who blame capitalism for inequality. It's everybody. And of course, capitalism, in a sense, is to blame for inequality. That is, capitalism does, freedom, in other words, does create inequality. Freedom creates inequality. Somebody's asking if This Man Is Mine is from 1943. Yes. Jean Renoir from 1943. How deep is South Korea economic statism and corruption? Very deep. It's a very, very, very crony economic model, particularly now. And as a consequence, the economy there is barely growing. It's in big trouble. And right now they have a socialist president who's deepening the corruption in the South Korean economy and ultimately putting it in far greater danger of having even less economic growth than what they've managed to produce in recent years. So South Korea is a real mess. Let's see. Is Christianity the root cause of the archetype of the rich as cruel and the poor as the victim? I think Christianity certainly has a real dominant view of that. It's or real dominant in shaping people's mind about this. So yes, in many respects, it is Christianity. the meek shall inherit the earth. It's harder for a rich man to go to heaven than a camel to go through the eye of a needle. And just the respect that Jesus shows the poor and so on, and the idea of sacrifice for the poor. So I think Christianity is a big part of it, but let's be clear. I mean, it's not like anybody else has been pro the rich, and partially because the rich, pre-capitalism, the rich were thieves, were aristocrats who basically stole, who basically confiscated, who basically feudal lords. So there was a reason to hate them. And what hasn't happened is we haven't had a revision in our moral code, and we haven't had a revision in our view of the world as a consequence. Once capitalism was introduced, we got a glimpse of the idea of the pursuit of happiness, of self-interest, of egoism in the Enlightenment, but it never really blossomed in a full-fledged ideology. And as a consequence, we still live with this view of the rich as feudal and as the rich as hated through the lens of Christianity. Somebody says Solaris, 1972, is an example of a movie which has conclusions which I don't agree with, but I absolutely love the overall product. Solaris is a movie I saw a long time ago, and I don't remember. If you were a rebel in Fahrenheit 451, what book would you want to memorize? Well, Atlas Shrugged, if at all possible. Right? Most important book ever written. And the one that has the answers to the dystopia of Fahrenheit 451 and to your own life and to living a good life. What did you make of the Indian headdress in the violent climax? Clearly it was a metaphor there. It was intentional, clearly. I mean, there's a whole playing of the Indian. The young son is enamored with American Indian. I think he's trying to make some multicultural statement there about Indians and the way kind of Western civilization trivializes Indian culture and Indian civilization and makes them out to be violent when the actual violence is within Western civilization. And look, this poor Indian with the headdress, the young kid, and that's innocent as compared to what these people are doing to one another in a westernized culture. I guess in the super chat they're mentioning Whiplash. Yeah, Whiplash had a good theme and a very well executed movie. I mean, the theme of Whiplash is excellence. It's the pursuit of excellence requires total commitment. It goes back to that the show I did on hard work, and it's absolutely. I mean, to be excellent, to be best of class, to be world class at anything requires total and absolute commitment, massive hard work, and I think that is a theme that Whiplash illustrated. You cannot be excellent without total dedication, total, absolute, overwhelming, overriding. Everything else must be put to aside, dedication. So Whiplash was a great movie that illustrates that really, really positive theme. Somebody asked, do you enjoy Bach? Yeah, not my favorite, but I can enjoy him, particularly when he's a little romanticized by people like Pablo Casals, or the 19th century kind of has a more romantic interpretation of Bach. The more traditional Bach is a little too cold and a little too cold for me, but I do enjoy some Bach. Another question is, Japan is in recession, why? What does this mean? Well, I mean, the why is that they have bad economic policies. In this particular case, they have raised consumption taxes significantly, twice now, and at the same time not lowered income taxes or lowered corporate taxes. And so they increasingly are taxing the Japanese economy. And the reason they're doing that is because they've got massive, unbelievable debt in Japan, 250% of GDP, and they just can't sustain that, so they have to find ways to pay it off. At the same time, they've got negative interest rates. They have invested heavily in infrastructure, like Donald Trump wants to do in America. They have labor laws that restrict the ability of companies to restructure. And so Japan has basically had no economic growth for 30 years, or very little economic growth for 30 years. And then recently, they've just got the shock, just today or yesterday, they announced this, of a massive decline. But the Japanese economy has been sick for a very, very, very long time. It's been mismanaged by their central bank and by the government. That, instead of massively deregulating, instead of massively cutting taxes, particularly corporate taxes and top marginal taxes, and then raising consumption taxes, they have increased consumption taxes while at the same time not lowering taxes on production. And they make it impossible to produce because of regulations and controls. Japan is a basket case economically. And look, the coronavirus is going to make it difficult generally for economies to do well. We're already seeing slowdown in the United States with Apple announcing and other companies announcing a breakdown in their supply chains and a significant slowdown in the supply chains. I wouldn't be surprised if the U.S. economy slowed because of coronavirus and because of what's happening in China. The world is integrated. The world's supply chains are integrated. A shock like the virus in China has ripple effects throughout the world, and that's part of what's happening in Japan. But mostly what's happening in Japan is self-inflicted. Did Americans ever have a better view of rich people than Europeans do? Yes. I mean, I'd say they still do, and they certainly had until 20, 30 years ago a much better attitude. Now, it doesn't mean every American. There's been a progressive movement since the mid-19th century that has attacked the wealth and has attacked production, has attacked the entrepreneurs and the businessmen, the wealth creators. But generally, Americans have had a much, 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 much better attitude towards wealth creation than Europeans have. Europeans basically are stuck in the Middle Ages in terms of their attitude. They're stuck in the era of aristocrats, in the era of robber barons, real robber barons, that is, barons who robbed people, highway robbery. That's the aristocrats who bought their position through force, through providing armies to kings and then oppressing their own people and being feudal lords over other people's work. So those people are that attitude in Europe is somewhat based on fact, somewhat based on history, at least on the way it was historically. They never caught up to the Industrial Revolution. The United States was born with capitalism, so in some respects, at least at its beginning, it had this very positive attitude towards wealthy people that I think still pervades some parts of America and pervaded America until relatively recently. That is, I'd say certainly until maybe until the financial crisis, maybe until 2008. There was still that American sense of life of, I don't envy the guy who lives on the hill. I want to be the guy who lives on the hill. I'm going to work hard and do the best that I can do for myself. That American attitude, that can-do attitude, that anti-envy attitude is essentially American. No other country has had it historically. And it has pervaded this country until recently. All right, let's do these two Super Chat questions, and then I want to talk about Mike Milken, and that relates to this issue of wealth. What do you think of the view that the U.S. economy is doing great? I mean, I think it's bizarre. The U.S. economy is doing well. It's doing okay. It's doing, from a growth perspective, it's doing the same as it did under Obama. From a jobs creating perspective, it's doing the same as it did under Obama. It's basically, if you look at the graphs, they all go, if you start them at 2009 with Obama's election, they basically going like this into the Trump era. The economy is larger than it's ever been before, but that always happens when you have economic growth. But economic growth is only 2%. Unemployment goes down because we're steadily creating jobs, but not at a huge rate. And the labor participation rate has gone down, but not at a huge rate. And it's nowhere near its historical highs, the labor participation rate. Part of that is demographics, but part of it is that there's still a lot of people not even looking for jobs, so they're not counted in the unemployment rate. The economy is doing okay, but it's not doing great. And the economy is, I think, quite susceptible to shocks like the coronavirus. And I think what Trump, as I said, has done some good things, some deregulation, some increase in regulation, but some deregulation, corporate tax cut, That's all been good, but tariffs and government spending out of control have been a disaster, a complete disaster. And I think those have offset each other, and basically you get a very much Obama-like economy. And I think that's probably why Trump will win, just like Obama won his second term, because the economy was okay. It was okay. People are not doing great in American economy today. There's not a sense of excitement in the middle class of economic growth, of substantial, significant economic growth for the middle class and for the working class. It just is not there. Maybe it's in Silicon Valley, maybe it's a few places, but even there, my sense is it's just not like when the economy is really, really growing and there's real economic excitement and people really have money to spend. The extent people are spending, they're taking on quite a bit of debt these days. Isolationist means anti-war, right? No, it doesn't. Isolationist means, it doesn't mean anything. Ayn Rand said it's an anti-concept. It combines two things. It combines, potentially, it could be pacifists like Ron Paul, and a resentment of America and a resentment of American strength. Or it could be don't intervene until you're threatened. It's not clear what it means. It means nothing. So a proper foreign policy is not anti-war. Proper foreign policy is anti-war that is not a war of self-defense. A proper foreign policy engages in war, engages in ruthless war, when it's in America's self-interest to engage in such a war, which is really when it's in our self-defense to do so, when it's required for the protection of America's individual rights and Americans' property, life and property. That's individual rights. All right, last two Super Chat questions, because I really want to get to Mike Milken, and you guys keep sending these. Australia has concentrated low diversity complexity economy. I don't know, has concentrated low diversity complexity economy. Property bubble, mining, tourism. How does government create this? How can it reverse course? I mean, it creates it. I don't know enough about the Australian economy, but basically it creates it by creating barriers to entry through environmental regulations, which is probably why there's not a lot of, by other regulations, by having a poor maybe educational system, by taxing certain forms. I'd have to think about what's being taxed and what isn't in Australia. Why there isn't a thriving tech and venture capital community in Australia. A lot of it has to do with tax policy and regulatory policy. So I don't know off the cuff what it is exactly in Australia that's doing it, but a lot of governments think that resources are the key, right? Oil and mining and things like that. And they give all kind of breaks and all kinds of subsidies and all kind of favors to one industry, really, and crowd out capital from other industries. They focus on some. And because there's so much money created probably from mining, you know what? Let me look into the Australian economy. So ask me another time about what it is. Is Carl Jung, his ideas compatible with objectivism? I don't know enough about Carl Jung, but I know enough to say no, his ideas are not compatible with objectivism. And Jordan Peterson's ideas are not compatible with objectivism. So, and that's most of what I know about Carl Jung is from Jordan Peterson, and everything I know about what Jordan Peterson says about Carl Jung suggests it's not compatible with objectivism. It gives the subconscious, the human subconscious, way too much power. It has too negative a view of human nature and human reason and the human capacity to think and to reason. And it's too, again, it's a direct attack on reason. And I think ultimately it has to involve a direct attack on self-interest, because what is self-interest if not reason ultimately for objectivism? All right, Mike Milken. So today, President Trump granted clemency to a bunch of people and pardoned a bunch of people. And as part of that, he granted clemency to real crooks, like the former governor of Illinois, Blagojevich, something like that, right? A Republican governor who was clearly committed fraud, was caught red-handed, and should have spent the rest of his term in jail. He got his sentence revoked, and basically he got clemency. He doesn't deserve it. I'm sure a lot of the other people that Trump gave clemency and so on didn't deserve it. So that's sad, and I generally think that presidents have generally abused their pardoning and clemency giving abilities. So they have that, it's in the Constitution, but I think they've abused it. And this is not what the Founding Fathers intended, and we're real criminals. Like, I remember Clinton, I think, pardoned this guy who gave a lot of money to the Democratic Party, but was also a fraud, a criminal, and was living in Switzerland, and he pardoned him. So, this stuff, this political favors, granting political favors through pardoning and clemency has a long tradition, and yet still I'm going to criticize it when it happens. However, in spite of all the bad people that Trump probably, well, I know about Blagojevich, and I'm sure others, there was one positive, and the positive was that he basically pardoned Mike Milken. This is 25 years after, 28 or 29 years after Mike Milken was sentenced to 10 years in jail, probably 25 or 26 years since he was released from jail because he had prostate cancer and was released so he could get treatment from it. He has been pardoned, and this is a great act of justice. Mike Milken was not, in my view, guilty for the crimes for which he was prosecuted. I think, or for the crimes for which he admitted guilt. I think he admitted guilt because of the pressure, the blackmail of the prosecutors in the case, who basically threatened his family, threatened his father, threatened his brother, threatened to drag everybody in and put them all behind bars. And Milken settled and pled guilty, I can't remember, I think for 6 counts. All those counts were minor, even if he was guilty of them. Not a single one of those involved time spent in jail. If it had been anybody else other than Michael Milken, he would have got a slap on the wrist, a warning, and a big fine. They were all like little things about helping people maybe cheat on their taxes or stuff like that, but nothing substantive, nothing significant. No, nothing like what people accuse him of, like insider trading. Not that I think insider trading should be a crime, but nothing even of that magnitude. These things were certainly not even crimes when it comes to stock parking. We can get into what that is if you really want, but it's again, technical violation of security laws. Nothing justified him going to jail. Mike Milken, in my view, I've said this many, many times, and if you've listened to my my course on the financial markets and the value of financial markets, I elaborate there. Mike Milken, in my view, is one of the great business heroes of America. He is one of the giants of American business. He is one of the great innovators in finance and innovators in business of the last 100 years. He is the greatest banker, second only to J.P. Morgan in the history of the United States, maybe in the history of the world. He basically single-handedly made it possible to restructure American business during the 1980s and the early 1990s. He created a great financing tool that allowed for leveraged buyouts and hostile takeovers and the private equity and all the things that people like Tucker Carlson, the left and the right today hate. Businessmen actually going in, firing people, and deploying resources for better use. That was, in a sense, invented, made possible, financed, and deployed by Mike Milken. He was the guy who basically held the hand of every hostile takeover artist of the 1980s, the heroes of the era, the people who saved the American economy and set it on a course of significant economic growth in the 90s and 2000s. He was the man missing in Japan. If Japan had a Mike Milken, they wouldn't have stagnated for the last 30 years. He is the man who could restructure the European economy today and put them on a path to growth. And he is heavily needed in America today. a stagnant America, a stagnant corporate environment, a stagnant use of capital, where hostile takeovers are rare and where everybody's against them, including the President of the United States, where states have passed laws against them, where pro-incumbent management laws dominate across state laws all over the country, where shareholders' rights are not protected, and where finance is being handcuffed and shackled so that it cannot innovate, it cannot produce the kind of allocation of capital that would drive vast economic growth and would drive a successful economy. So Mike Milken was the right person at the right time. He saved the U.S. economy from a horrific economy in the 1970s, created the amazing economy the United States had in the 1990s and into the 2000s. Again, given how statist we are, it was stunning that we had such a good economy during those years. And that is all not a consequence of Ronald Reagan. It's not a consequence of Alan Greenspan. It's not a consequence of Bill Clinton. It is a consequence of the greatest businessmen, or one of the very top list of businessmen of the last 30 years and the greatest banker of the last 100 years, Michael Milken. And because of his success, and this goes to Jennifer's question earlier about hatred of the rich, because of his success, he was hated, he was despised, he was the villain. The left despised him, the unions hated him. He was the target of the Justice Department. My hatred, deep-seated hatred of Rudy Giuliani goes back to the fact that Rudy Giuliani accepted the job of district attorney for the Southern District of New York. The job, by the way, that the district attorney has in billions, at least in season one. That job that is responsible for disciplining, if you will, Wall Street, that is the job Rudy Giuliani took. And he took that job. He left a very senior job at the Justice Department in Washington, D.C. to take this job in the Southern District with the sole intent of going after Michael Milken. And Giuliani then harassed everybody on Wall Street, trying to squeeze them to get dirt on Michael Milken, to get dirt on Michael Milken's firm, Drexel Burnham Lampert. They did whatever they could to try to catch him at something. He sent lots of innocent people to jail. Many of his convictions were overturned on appeal, but in the meantime, completely destroyed the lives of financiers, of business people, real heroes of the era. He was the first to use RICO. RICO is a statute was passed to catch gangsters, and it says that you can seize their property before the trial. So talk about due process, no due process. You can take their property before they've been found guilty of a crime. Now that's bad enough when you use it on mafia criminals. Imagine now using it on financiers. So you arrest them and you seize their assets. So they can't do business anymore because their asset is their reputation and their asset is their money, their firm. The number of lives that Rudy Giuliani betrayed is just unbelievable. Why am I hating on Trump? I haven't mentioned Trump. What's this got to do with Trump? Jesus. Giuliani is a horrible, disgusting figure, and I talked about this when he ran for president a few years ago. This is not new. I've always slammed Rudy Giuliani. I have been slamming Rudy Giuliani for 30 years now, since the late 1980s. I've hated the guy. He is one of the most despicable characters in American politics, and his treatment of Wall Street and Mike Milken is a disgrace. So Giuliani went after Milken. Ultimately, it was his successors who prosecuted Milken, but with Giuliani-like tactics. And, you can't talk about anything even close to Trump, in the vicinity of Trump. You can't criticize anything that emanates from Trump without getting the lobotomized Trumpists all upset and jumping up and down. And, Yaron is suffering from some Trump syndrome. Oh, my God, look at yourselves in the mirror. Look at yourselves in the mirror. It's disgusting. Anyway, Giuliani's a horrible guy. Milken is a hero. I am happy happy to see Milken get a pardon, even though it came as a package deal with a bunch of people who shouldn't have been granted clemency and granted pardons. I'm just happy for Milken. He is one of my heroes, and he should be one of yours. He should be one of yours. Mike Milken is, it's great to see a pardoned. And if you want more information about Milken, listen to my course on financial markets and institutions, and read the book on Mike Milken called, does anybody remember the book I recommend about Mike Milken? This is where my memory lapses are problematic, right? Milken book. Yeah, I'm not sure. Not the usual ones. Don't read Predator's Ball. Don't read Fall for Grace. Where is it? Payback. Read Payback. Payback is a brilliant book. Truly brilliant book. And it talks about Milken's firm. It talks about Drexel, Burnham Lampert, and the injustice of basically the government shutting them down, and it shows how corrupt the American government was back in the Reagan era. This is under Reagan and Bush. Under Reagan and Bush, the government was corrupt enough to go after Milken and to try to destroy Michael Milken. So, I mean, today it's so much worse. So much worse. It's really horrible. Anyway, good for Mike Milken for being pardoned. Another good thing that Trump has done. I think accidentally, ultimately, but done. Let's see. A number of Super Chat questions here. Somebody says, I'd like for you to do a review of the movie Smallfoot. It's a children's movie, but based on the antagonist as well as other themes. I think this is the most objectivist-friendly film I've seen. I've never heard of it. All right, I'll put it in my file of things to possibly see. Here's one. I'm always honest with myself. That's good. But in a situation where I don't have time to think, how do you go about accepting the principle of honesty when you can't see why it's correct and you think that it will be better if you lie? Well, that's what a principle is. The whole point of a principle is to give you that shortcut, to not require you in an emergency, where you have to decide quickly, or even not in an emergency. It's just when you're living and you have to decide quickly. You can't think about everything all the time. That's the point of a principle. It gives you guidance. You know, I don't lie. That's it. I'll think about it later. Why exactly? I remember, but I'll figure it out later. So it's absolutely the case that that's what a principle does. It condenses that information for you. You prove it once, and then you hold it. And you can reprove it once in a while. You can go back and reprove it. And yeah, so you don't have to, if you're feeling that uncertainty, you feel, but why is it? Then you have to integrate it further. You have to do a better job integrating it and understanding it and making it a part of you. You have to better get it as a principle. Because if you do, once you get it as a principle, once you understand it fully, once you integrate it into your life, you won't have those nagging feelings of, but wait a minute, why isn't it okay to lie right now? So you have more work to do, I'd say, on integrating the principle into your life. Does the mixed economy prove that humanity can get pretty far on partial correct ideas? Yes, but it can get pretty pretty bad on partially correct ideas, right? So the mixed economy ultimately also gave us the rise of Nazism, and I'd say the rise of communism, because there wasn't capitalism, and capitalism was not an alternative and was presented as one and wasn't fought for. So ultimately, the mixed economy usually goes towards some horrific outcome. Right? Some horrific outcome. So, mixed economy doesn't stay mixed forever. So yes, in the short run, you can get by, humanity can get by on partially correct ideas. In the long run, it cannot. In the long run, it collapses into death and destruction. Now, it's true that the long run is the very long run, and one can live for a long time in a mixed economy. We've seen that in America. We've had a mixed economy for 100 years, and for overall, we've lived pretty good lives with that. I will say that imagine what could have been. And we're deteriorating, and it's not clear to me that it'll last. People are fawning over Trump publicly, so he'll say their name approvingly in a tweet, silly or dangerous. Well, dangerous. I mean, the whole fawning over Trump is dangerous. And while some people might think I have Trump derangement syndrome, what I really have is I have derangement over the lobotomized Trump fans, the people who will fawn over Trump, the people who think Trump can do no wrong, the people who think that Trump is God's gift to America. That I am deranged about. It's not even Trump. Trump is boring. It's the phenomena of Trump. What is it? Lobotomization syndrome, that people have completely lost their capacity to think for themselves, completely lost their critical thinking skills, completely lost their connection to reality. That is what to me is stunning. What I've really noticed over the since Trump's election, but probably it was there before, but I noticed it since is how political people are, how tribal people are, how it's all about the tribe and all about politics. So the left is evil, bad, stupid, dumb, inferior, no matter what, right? So even if they're really great businessmen, well, they're just cronies, or they're lucky, or they're stupid, because how can a leftist be smart and a good businessman? Or even if they're good politicians in terms of manipulating their audience and succeeding and advancing their cause, and smart in the terms of how they do interviews and so on, like AOC. No, they can't be smart, because a politician on the left can't be smart. She's stupid. She's an idiot because she's on the other team. And of course, our stupid idiot people on our team, they can be stupid and idiot because they're on our team. Therefore, they must be intelligent. So the whole debate is mindless. It is tribal, collectivistic mindlessness. And all you have to see is look at the chat of this show, and you can see it manifest right in front of your eyes. You can see the kind of stupidity and tribalism and collectivism and mindlessness that is exhibited by those who not just support Trump, but are mindlessly supporting Trump, and therefore mindlessly attacking everybody else. I mean, you can think that AOC is not smart, though. That's fine. I don't mind disagreeing on that about whether AOC is smart or not. I mean, she is within what her job is, which is politicians, and to manipulate the media and to get her agenda across. You know, her candidate is winning in a Democratic primaries, which he shouldn't be, and a lot of it is her, because he was dying of a heart attack not that long ago, Bernie Sanders, and I think she was a huge boost to his campaign. She is dominating American politics right now on the left. Now, you might say, well, they're all idiots on the left, and therefore that's no big deal. I don't view it that way. I don't view everybody on the left as idiots, and I don't automatically view them as idiots because they're wrong. They're wrong. And again, she's very good at turning the conversation to morality when it should be about morality, and pointing out how the right cannot handle a conversation with regard to morality. The right can only say, but how are you going to pay for that? Oh my God, how are we going to pay for that? That's all the right can say. And you think AOC's stupid? I think all the critics are stupid. I think the people criticizing her are stupid. I think she's very good at what she does. I don't think she's good. I don't think she's right. I think she's an immoral. I think she's completely, utterly immoral and wrong about everything. Immoral and wrong does not necessitate stupid. What would pride and self-esteem if you were a bricklayer or a janitor? Would you be proud of your kids if they took those possessions? Wouldn't you be miserable if the job you perform doesn't reach the scope of your capabilities? Of course. But the whole point is to find the scope of your capabilities. If your capabilities, though, are limited to being a bricklayer or a janitor, then you take pride in being a bricklayer or janitor. But if your capabilities are being, a captain of industry, then, you being a bricklayer and a janitor is depressing and can result in low self-esteem. Self-esteem is driven by you living up to your potential as a human being on this earth, you proving to yourself that you can be the best that you can be. You living the best life that you can. That's how you get the self-esteem. So if you're not living up to your potential, you're not going to get the self-esteem. But that a janitor doesn't mean he's not living up to his potential. Maybe that's his potential. Maybe all he can do is janitorial work. Maybe a bricklayer can only do bricklaying. Ayn Rand has a bricklayer in the Fountainhead, but he's a really, really good bricklayer. But that's his limit. He can't do more than that. All right. Somebody says wrong equals stupid. Einstein was wrong on politics. Newton was wrong on religion. Almost every smart person I know is wrong on something. Wrong and smart are not the same thing. All right. I think we're done. I will talk about conservative economics tomorrow. There's a whole new think tank being established called American Compass. We'll talk about what American Compass stands for and what they advocate tomorrow. Same time, I think, 7 o'clock Eastern time. And we'll see what else we talk about, but we'll definitely talk about American Compass and the new economic program of the conservative right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, thumbs up if you liked the show. You can do thumbs down if you didn't. That's okay. Share the show if you really liked it. And, of course, don't forget to support the Yaron Brook Show at yaronbrookshow.com/support. I really appreciate it. It makes it possible for me to do much of what I do. Thank you for all the super chatters and for your support of the show through the Super Chat feature. And yes, you can also support me on Patreon and a Subscribe Star. So use all those different avenues to support the show. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you all for listening. And have a great evening and a great week. Bye, everybody.